And here's my video to show you. Republican, Democrat, I don't give a damn. If you're corrupt and rotten and it comes across my eyeballs, sounds worthy of talking about, we need to talk about it. So this isn't at the federal level, but this is the state of Ohio. You know, because at the federal level, we have the House and the Senate. Every state has a House and Senate for the state. They pass state laws the same way we do in the federal government. So whatever state you're living in, you have to deal with these effing criminals too. Politicians. Both sides of the aisle are corrupt. As long as they're being taken out, I don't care. Oh, I was a Republican, Joe. What do you got to say about that? Nothing. What do I have to say about it? I'm going to do a news story on it. How about that? Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder. What the... Did you change your last name because you like being Speaker of the House? Householder. He's a householder. He's a household name. Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder arrested in $60 million bribery case. That's today, July 21st. This is being posted, 2020. Federal officials arrested Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder and 4 others on Tuesday morning in connection with a $60 million bribery case. Also arrested Neil Clark, founder of Grant Street Consultants, and once called by USA Today one of the best connected lobbyists in Columbus. Former Ohio Republican Party chair and consultant Matthew Borges, and Juan Cespedes, co-founder of the Oxley Group in Columbus, and Jeffrey Longstreth, advisor to Householder. A spokeswoman for De Villers said an Ohio official and associates were charged in the case, which she described as a public corruption racketeering conspiracy involving $60 million. Well, that sounds like RICO, as far as I'm concerned. Householder is one of the biggest names in Ohio politics and has been a major player for years in the state's Republican Party. He's known as an aggressive fundraiser who doesn't shy away from hardball tactics on the campaign trail or in the State House. He first served as Ohio's House Speaker from 2001 to 2004. The FBI launched an investigation in 2004 into allegations that Householder and his aides took kickbacks from vendors and traded legislation for campaign contributions. The investigation ended in 2006 with no charges filed. Now remember, was that Deep State FBI or Trump's current FBI? Back in those days. Oh, that was Deep State. So if the Deep State didn't go after a Republican Party member, what does that tell us? That person's probably part of the Deep State. After returning to the House a few years ago, Householder staged a comeback with help from the Democrats. Well, there's all we needed to know. When he took advantage of GOP infighting and returned to the Speaker's post. When everyone else is in complete disarray is usually when I'm at my best, he said. In his latest stint as Speaker, Householder oversaw a controversial Republican-led bailout of 2 Ohio nuclear power plants. House Bill 6, signed by Governor Mike DeWine in June, used ratepayer fees for the $1 billion bailout of the plants in northern Ohio. And Governor Mike DeWine, is this a Republican or Democrat? Because this guy is the Speaker of the House, basically, and he's a Republican. Just curious. Governor Mike DeWine. Facebook. There's Wikipedia, politician and attorney, currently serving as the 7th governor of Ohio, a member of the Republican Party. DeWine is a former United States Senator, elected in 1994 and re-elected in 2000. In 2006, DeWine ran for re-election to a 3rd term, but lost to the Democratic nominee, U.S. Representative Sherrod Brown. DeWine had served as Lieutenant Governor of Ohio under George Voinovich, from 92 to 94. In 2010, DeWine was elected Ohio Attorney General, defeating Democratic incumbent Richard Cordray, and was re-elected for the 2nd term in 2014. In 2018, the gubernatorial election, DeWine was elected Governor of Ohio, defeating Cordray in a rematch. So he gladly signed that bill into law. This is the Republicans, state Republicans. And I was talking to someone the other day. Who was I talking to? Might have been Woo Woo Dude. Matter of fact, it might have been in the live stream. I don't know. But whoever this was, we were talking about a world or a country world where if we just were able to remove the parties. In other words, you're not allowed to be a part of any party. There are no parties. It's only you as the person. How different things might actually be. Because, again, the criminal Democrats right now in our federal government, Pelosi, Schumer, all those guys, there are so many people, like my wife's uncle, remember him, Uncle Pete. Oh, my grandfather voted Democrat, my father voted Democrat. I always vote Democrat, no matter what. No matter what. Like, even if maybe someone not so good, well, we always vote Democrat. Just, that's it, we vote Democrat. Doesn't matter who it is. Huh. How many people are out there that only vote Republican because that's all I've done all my life? My father and my grandfather and Democrat. So if you remove that nonsense and we're left with just people, what do they stand for? What's their voting history like? Oh, no thanks. You don't have to get tied to, well, yeah, but that's my team. All my friends are going to say, oh, but Joe, he's part of the team, part of the blue club. The blue guys. Well, I didn't want to tell you guys I'm switching to the red. Nope, can't do that. We just need people, not parties. Not parties. But at the same time, would it matter? You think Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and all these people wouldn't still do what they do? Oh, I'm Chuck Schumer, and I'm Nancy Pelosi. No party affiliation. Okay. Does it really matter? But again, in the voting terms, it would. Because everyone can still see their track records and say, okay, I've had enough of them, I'm voting them out. Oh, but they're part of the blue party. I can't. I always have to vote Democrat, right? So that would stop that nonsense on the voter side. But anyways, the fight to approve the money was long and costly, extending even after the bill was signed into law. An effort to overturn the bailout ultimately failed after it met fierce resistance from well-funded competition. One group was a dark money operation called Generation Now, a 501c4 that was not required to disclose donors under federal law. The group hired blockers to stall signature collectors working for those opposed to the ballot. To the bailout. The second group, Ohioans for Energy Security, paid for millions in advertisements, including ones that warned Ohioans that the Chinese were taking over Ohio's power grid. Larry Householder, this top Ohio Republican, has made a career of thriving in chaos. Yes, he has. So there you have it. Corruption is corruption. Get them all out of office. I don't care, independent, Republican, Democrat. Get these criminals out of office. This whole thing called democracy. See, I've done a few videos. And I'm willing to bet right now. Search across your channel. The cycles of government. Here's two of them. The cycles of government and what our near future holds. April 20th, 2020. The cycles of government revisited. August 15th, 2013. Now, that's some years ago. But if you'd like to search for those, I mean, I'm basically talking about the same thing, to be honest with you. And either of those would work. It goes on to talk about some of these great Greek and other philosophers, and they talk about the cycles of government. And I'll just type it in right now. The cycles of government. Let's see if I can find that little wiki. Yeah, cyclos. Aristotle, Polybius, Cicero, Machiavelli. It's a quick read. Let's just go ahead and get into it right now. And part of this you can understand. Oh, no wonder why we go to this degenerate form of government called democracy, because we want power ourselves. We're tired of you one rulers dealing with everything. You're so freaking corrupt. We want power back. Okay, it works for a while, and then everyone starts realizing, gosh, all I gotta do is there's numerous positions of power I could It's a smorgasbord. Which one do I want? I can make money either way. Backroom deals, bailouts. Again, like this, Ohio power plant bailout. Oh, but, you know, sorry about y'all's luck. The taxpayer always pays. And then we've had enough. You guys are all corrupt. The whole freaking system's corrupt with a bunch of cockroaches. We need to go back to kings and queens. We need a leader like, you know, Donald Trump. He's going to fix everything. And he actually does. As I'll read you in this thing, I'm using him as an example. And the guy, whoever it is, again, cycles of government, the cycle of democracy ends. Anarchy ensues. After anarchy, we go back to kings and queens. And that person, we all said, yes, you're going to take power because you are for the people. And you control everything. We don't have to have these idiots corrupt. Great. And it works for a while. And then his kids become power after him. They take power. And maybe his kids were around when all the craziness was happening. So they remember. They were part of it. They're going to keep doing what Papa was doing. And then their kids, you know, they weren't around when any of this happened. They start to realize, you know, we can get a little more money here. Okay. Next thing you know, they become corrupt. We need to change that form of government. So let's get into this. This is kind of a quick read. It's very interesting. Cyclos. Ancient Greek. Kyklos or cyclos or cycle is a term used by some classical Greek authors to describe what they considered as the cycles of governments in a society. It was roughly based on the history of Greek city-states in the same period. The concept of the cyclos is, and I think it's maybe more like kyklos for them, is first elaborated by Plato, Aristotle, and most extensively by Polybius. They all came up with their own interpretation of the cycle and possibly solutions to break the cycle, since they thought the cycle to be harmful. Later writers such as Cicero and Machiavelli commented on the kyklos. Plato. And you'll hear some of their, oh yeah, if we made sure that never happened, and made sure that never happened, we could potentially keep a good system of government. And as I read you some of this, you'll realize, oh yeah, they took that away. Oh, we got rid of that a long time ago. Oh yeah, you know. Plato describes his version of the cyclos, or kyklos, in his work, Republic, Book 8 and 9. He distinguishes 5 forms of government: aristocracy, democracy, oligarchy, democracy, and tyranny. And again, if Hillary Clinton had won, I think the cycle was obvious. What's after democracy? Tyranny. And writes that governments devolve, not evolve, devolve, respectively, in this order, from aristocracy into tyranny. Plato's cycle of governments is linked with his anthropology of the rulers that come with each form of government. This philosophy is intertwined with the way the cycles of governments play out. An aristocracy is ruled by aristocratic people whose rule is guided by their rationality. The decline in aristocracy into democracy happens when people who are less qualified to rule come into power. Their rule and decision-making is guided by honor. Democracy devolves into oligarchy as soon as those rulers act in pursuit of wealth. Oligarchy devolves into democracy when the rulers act on behalf of freedom. And lastly, democracy devolves into tyranny if rulers mainly seek power. Plato believes that having a philosopher king, and thus having an aristocratic form of government, is the most desirable. On to Aristotle. Aristotle writes about the cycle of governments in his Politics. He believes the cycle begins with monarchy and ends in anarchy, and that it does not start anew. He also refers to democracy as the degenerate form of rule by the many, and calls the virtuous form politeia, which is often translated as constitutional democracy. All the philosophers believe that this cycling was harmful. The transitions would often be accompanied by violence and turmoil, and a good part of the cycle would be spent with the degenerate forms of government. Aristotle gave a number of options as to how the cycle could be halted or slowed. And here's a few bullet points, several. 1. even the most minor changes to basic laws and constitutions must be opposed, because over time, the small changes will add up to a complete transformation. You guys remember having constitutional money? Well, of course you don't. You weren't alive. Called gold and silver. It was written in the Constitution. It's still there, by the way. Nothing but gold and silver coin shall be used to pay all debts, private and public. And then in 1913, a skeleton crew in Congress got together, and some of these people who opposed the creation of the Federal Reserve paper money system were actually on the Titanic and died. Gosh, what a bad luck for them. I mean, the thing hit an iceberg. It was an act of God. You know, they just happened to be on the boat, of course. And the law was passed. Again, changed, if you will. And then they went to the Supreme Court shortly after, I think in 1918, if I recall. And the Supreme Court said, well, hold on. As long as the gold's the money's backed by gold, the paper money, that's okay, because the gold's still there. Okay. And then 1933, 34, 35, oh, we want to confiscate all your gold. We had a major depression in 1929. We're going to confiscate all y'all's gold. But don't worry, the government's holding it. It'll still be in the government's name. Don't worry about it. We're going to pay you $20 an ounce for it, and we're going to instantly revalue to $35 as soon as you hand it all in, which they did. And then in 1971, 72, Richard Nixon, we're going completely off the gold standard. Again, little subtle change there. Oh, another one in 1935. Okay. Another one in 1971. Okay. Now we don't have any gold-backed currency. And now we have something called the effing IRS income tax, which came to being the income tax law in 1916, just 3 years after the Federal Reserve, because somebody's going to have to pay for that debt that we're creating. Before that, we had no debt to create. We created our own money and didn't charge ourselves interest. Then comes the 1913 Act, Federal Reserve Act. Have a nice day. The rest is history. Now we're all debt slaves, etc. So that was point number one. Number two, in aristocracies and democracies, the tenure of rulers must be kept very short to prevent them from becoming despots. Oh, how long's Nancy Pelosi been in office? How long's Chuck Schumer been in office? How about Dianne Feinstein, Maxine Waters, Joe Biden, Hillary, the Clintons, all of them? The tenure of ruler must be kept very short to prevent them from becoming despots. I agree. External threats. You're gonna love this one. Your mind's instantly. I know where your mind's gonna go. Shootings, 9/11. Oh, here we go. Ready? Ready? This has been going on for how long? False flags. Guess what? Aristotle, number 3. External threats, real or imagined, preserve internal peace. Number 4, the 3 government basic systems can be blended into one, taking the best elements of each. Next one, if any one individual gains too much power, be it political, monetary, or military, he should be banished from the police, from the government. Next one, judges and magistrates must never accept money to make decisions. Oh, and the next one, the middle class must be large. You must have a large middle class. And in our country, we did. And then it shrank under the last few presidents. And now it's about to increase by leaps and bounds thanks to Donald Trump. And finally, most important to Aristotle in preserving a constitution is education. You're going to love this one, people. If all the citizens are aware of law, history, and the Constitution, they will endeavor to maintain a good government. But if you have people, and I'm saying this part, if you have ignoramuses out there, because our schools don't teach the real history anymore, and they don't teach you about the laws and the constitutions and the rights and the freedoms, and then those people who are kids grow up to be police officers who have no regard whatsoever for the Constitution, and they start abusing people, like you can go to YouTube and just search for the words First Amendment audit. and just spend as long as you want. There's tons and tons of videos. Filming in public, filming a police station from a sidewalk, filming a library from a sidewalk, filming a federal building from a sidewalk. The police are called. Many times they're detained. What are you doing here? I don't have to answer that. It's, public photography is not a crime. And just watch the ignoramuses. Anyways, on to Polybius. According to Polybius, who has the most fully developed version of the cyclos, or kyklos, it rotates through three basic forms of government: democracy, aristocracy, and monarchy, and then the three degenerate forms of each of these governments: ochlocracy, oligarchy, and tyranny. Originally, society is in ochlocracy, but the strongest figure emerges and sets up a monarchy. The monarch's descendants, which I was talking about earlier, who lack virtue because of their family's power, become despots, and the monarchy degenerates into a tyranny. Because of the excesses of the ruler, the tyranny is overthrown by the leading citizens of the state who set up an aristocracy. They too quickly forget about virtue, and the state becomes an oligarchy. These oligarchs are overthrown by the people who set up a democracy. Democracy soon becomes corrupt and degenerates into ochlocracy, beginning the cycle anew. Polybius's concept of the cycle of governments is called anacyclosis. Polybius, in contrast to Aristotle, focuses on the idea of mixed government. The idea that the ideal government is one that blends elements of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. Aristotle mentions this notion, but pays little attention to it. Polybius saw the Roman Republic as the embodiment of this mixed constitution, and this would explain why the Roman Republic was so powerful and why it would remain stable for a longer amount of time. Polybius's description of the anacyclosis can be found in Book 6 of his Histories. And then we have Cicero. Cicero describes anacyclosis in his philosophical work De Republica. His version of the anacyclosis is heavily inspired by Polybius's writing, and he argues, contrary to Polybius, that the Roman state can prevail and will not succumb to the harmful cycle despite its mixed government, as long as the Roman Republic will return to its ancient virtues. Excuse me. And then Machiavelli although he adopts the idea of this circular structure in which types of governments alternate, he does not accept Polybius's idea that the cycle naturally devolves through the exact same patterns of governments. Well, I think we've got a lot of history these days, and it sure looks like it was heading that way. And again, we would be in tyranny right now under Hillary Clinton. So, hope I've gave you some history that you've never in your life heard of in school. Take care.